So the first thing I want you all to think about with this video is whether or not I'm human or a robot. And also, are we sure this is not a simulation? That's the kind of questions we need to start asking ourselves with the rise of AI-driven content tools and AI generally. It's something that we need to consider as we move forward because obviously these considerations are relevant to us. I don't think I'm a robot. I might be living in a simulation. I'm not sure. Your mileage may vary, but it's worth considering because if you just let these tools kind of come up in our wheelhouse and you don't pay attention to them, you have the risk of letting the world pass you by. So Siege Media is a content marketing agency, 100 plus people. We work with the biggest brands in the world. We're paying attention to these tools. And as of now, our opinion is that they're really not going to be that helpful for helping you rank in very premium, high quality, competitive markets. And there are several reasons we have that belief. If you like this video, we have other content just like it, tools reviews, content strategy in the SEO world, how to increase your website traffic, all the backbone of trying to move faster and rank quickly that these tools often do. So make sure you jam that notification bell, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content just like this. Essentially, there are a lot of different tools in this space. I won't name them all. The one I'm going to demo in this specific video is Lex. It's coming on the scene. There's Jarvis, but Lex has a browser, essentially word processor, which is great, has clean UI, all great stuff that is worth checking out. But the context of this overall tool is how can this fit in? Does it make sense for you and add value in any way as AI and GPT-3 and maybe GPT-4 in the future currently stands? And the feeling is no. So to really show the proof in the pudding here, I want to give you a live demo of using this tool and how it might be deployed in the search results. What these tools do overall is they speed up content. They have the ability to deploy AI written content really quickly. It will like blow you away at first that somehow you can just hit 2 buttons and immediately get a ton of content pumped out that looks pretty good. The problem basically lies in the fact, especially in competitive verticals, that the difference between something is pretty good and that will allow you to rank is just so wide that it's just not usable at all, in our opinion. Like a comparable analogy I would say is like you could have a 6th grader write articles on many topics and come up with something comparable. They probably also plagiarize content like GPT-3 does, but that's not going to be usable on any brand's website on average. And if you have a vertical where you could hire a 6th grader to write that content, AI writing tools could be great for you. So there's many different reasons that's the case and why there's kind of failabilities in the overall framework that's worth considering. First, as we think about these tools generally and you're working as a big brand, these can't pick up on brand voice or brand implications on average. So if you're writing as a certain brand, you have unique positioning, you have a unique voice, it's just not going to be able to pick up on that in the way you want it to. It can do a decent job using that kind of like previous content to fill in the new content, but it's just probably not going to be able to pull out the unique feature of your software tool because it doesn't have that corpus to kind of like work off against. So that's number one. By nature, it's writing vanilla, not sophisticated content that you want to convert because it's just not feasible to be able to understand that at the way it kind of computes its models. I'm not a engineer by any means, so I might be saying some things that might be outright wrong, but the reality of like how these things work generally and what I've seen in the pudding is definitely been the case so far. So that's point number one of the potential weaknesses of this is not writing in voice and tone and be able to incorporate calls to action in the correct way. So the second part of this is essentially that the limitations of these tools are that they are limited to fragments. What that means is OpenAI didn't want to, even though they unleashed a ton of spam, they didn't want to completely unleash a ton of spam. So most of these tools are essentially rate limited in how much copy can be created in each case. So what that means is you get these fragments of copy that aren't necessarily useful and also kind of disrupt flow of content. If you think of your like a good book or good writing or good content, essentially there's flow to what's occurring there. And by nature, if you kind of like fragmentize that content, you're going to get a fragmented flow and feel that's suboptimal. It's just not premium. It's not going to do exactly what you want. So that's going to create a choppy article that won't end up in a premium outcome for you. So that's by nature limitation of the framework of these tools. The second part is that these just generally do not include design direction. So we're kind of unique in this way, but we believe that great content includes design. Good writing and content by nature has design direction as part of that structure. Increasingly, content is more about the overall experience, scannability, bold, how the design looks, what kind of copy is going to be incorporated in that design. And that's just not something that is not nearly sophisticated enough to do. So if you see this example on page, how we often give design direction to our designers and how to build that, not currently in the wheelhouse of these kind of tools. They can also consider design is needed here, design is not needed here to kind of break up that framework. That's a problem with how it's currently in operation to actually get to premium outcomes. One of the biggest things I think with using these tools and the fragments and the design direction, and it also factors into many kind of like the content brief tools we see that I've always struggled with and never really wanted to go to with our team of content marketers, even though we train them on the ins and outs of SEO, is it's not creatively minded. It's going to prime writers and content marketers to think non-creatively, think structurally, think like shortcut fashion. That does not create an outcome that's positive or premium on average. I'm repeating this word a lot, but essentially, if you give someone this tool that's going to like nudge them to creating fragmented, not well done, broken up content, they're probably going to do that more often. Even if it could technically speed it up, the risk of rolling out or deploying a tool that encourages people to take shortcuts will result in shortcutted content that is less good on average. So I see the value of tools like this being able to speed up certain things, but it's one of those catch 22s. If you as a writer can think sophisticated enough to think on your feet and understand how that could lead to that, I could see how this could be deployed efficiently. But the risk I see is that if any kind of like significant operation, that is too risky of a move and too creatively inhibiting to actually warrant using these tools. And that's a major reason we haven't used content brief tools in the past or AI content tools in the past. Is not because they don't add some little incremental value, but our belief is that getting a content piece SEO optimized from A to A plus would technically bring the creativity down to a B minus, which brings the SEO actually down to A minus, if that makes sense. That's a lot of grades, but essentially that idea is that you inhibit creativity by giving people tools that will lead them to the wrong pool of water, essentially. So that's what you're trying to not do. And one major reason the way these tools function currently is not something I would ever want to, as it currently stands, hand to a content team because of the potential implications it would have on creativity and quality of that content. The next piece is essentially this is random. Like you can rerun the same tool many times and get different answers. And I think by nature, that is a negative on search. Like content should be structured a certain way. It should have certain things when you get to true sophistication. A lot of these are incremental topics that we're searching to kind of like eke out a 10% improvement on certain outcomes or keyword topics that exist in terms of overall quality. Inconsistency by nature is showing us that we're getting that 6th grade outcome rather than the A plus outcome that we're getting. So if we like run this in my example, so we have a post just to kind of introduce it. We do have a post on Siege on the best content marketing tools that exist. I kind of pasted in our intro just to give them a sense of what we might create. So we can see the first version gives us 2 tools, Google Docs and Hemingway editor. And we run this again just to kind of like see how it continues to build it. You can see there's a formatting error in the second paragraph. This one is just like one sentence, not nearly in depth enough to be usable for any kind of premium outcome. And then we keep running it. And what do we get this time? We get Google Trends, Ahrefs, It's structuring it in a similar fashion, but we can see it kind of broke the structure and how things are operated. I do like it's like relatively short overall and kind of creating some thesis there. But if we rerun this concept, we'll see what kind of lists and options we get. What I've noticed on average is it does mix up what's listed. As you can see, it's now structuring it differently. The tools are different. Doesn't mean it wouldn't come to the same conclusions in the final list of 31 tools. That's possible. But you can see I would never actually structure a content post in this way. It's too thin on an average post about tools. We need to make it more comprehensive. I would have a screenshot here. Ideally, I'd be given design direction to a designer to take this kind of screenshot. Those are the kind of things that are present in here. You can see it's kind of bouncing around to alternatives. That's not necessarily a great thing for the overall polish of this content. And you can see what I think is useful and might be helpful in how this is done. I could like very quickly run this to get a list of tools. That would be a good directional indicator, but I could also do that on the search results also. What I feel in running this is I'm not really getting that much. I wouldn't have just found quickly looking on search results and determining that myself. Something that more recently Bernard from ClearScope recently made clear is it seems like Google is looking to surface additive content or not additive. What you want to do as content marketers, though, is create content that is additive to what's on the search results. By nature, they're essentially sophisticated autocompletes. Michael King also recently said that, which I thought was a great observation. When you see a lot of these Gmail tools and other ones, they're predicting it based on the previous model that they were fed. So by nature, they can't really do something additive on top of that. So if I was Google, if I was users, I would look for things that are incremental on top that by nature cannot be built out through the existing corpus of content that exists that it's feeding off of. So you can see the issues with that by nature is that because it can't do something additive, we can't truly ever do something that ranks as a limitation of that structure. So if we rely on only that corpus, we're going to get the same content. And what we're seeing, what Bernard is seeing is more and more Google wants addition rather than the same. And because of that, you're going to do worse. So we have something at Siege called the VINES acronym that we use to think about how to add value to what is already existing on the search result. Essentially, what that stands for is video, images, news, experts, and social media. Those are good places to look to for additive content than what you would just find on the search result to differentiate. SparkToro is another great tool there that will allow you to find experts to reference and look at in this overall kind of use case. So yeah, if we go back to these tools, I mean, I still like it. Don't get me wrong. You watch me generate some content. Like it's pretty remarkable when you see it play out in terms of how these things work. You can see it's just like inconsistent, not using periods even. The structure doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like they get the framework decently well, but it's really everything inside the framework that's going to enable you to rank on average. What I do like these tools for, and I don't want to like, I would guess some people could come to this video and think, of course, Siege doesn't like AI writing content. It's like potentially at risk with our business model. That would be a fair comment. But what I would always do, and we're always doing here at Siege, is what I think a lot of people are even saying about these tools is that they could speed up your content. It's not going to replace humans, but it could speed them up. And currently, I'm honestly not seeing the use case to even speed up what we do if you're actually trying to get to premium. So that is a current stance we're at. I do think there are some things that could add value that could be warranted. I specifically like this tool that has title generators. That's kind of a good idea. So a good common recommendation for titles is to like come up with 10 titles for clickability. So what this tool can do is essentially you just hit a button and it will automatically give you different takes on that you could iterate on. Again, none of these I would actually use, but it's not a bad kind of indication to get me thinking about what I currently have to further build on that. So I think a lot of these tools might help you kind of like check it or check your title. I like the title part, meta description. It's essentially that low quality content and maybe quickly brainstorming an idea that might be useful. But otherwise, right now, as it comes to brainstorming and creating really helpful content, I'm just not there with these tools. I will bow to our robot overlords when they do arrive. And I am a simulation, just as a heads up, don't tell anybody.
So, since recording that last message, I've essentially been replaced by a robot. Not true, but as many of you probably have seen, ChatGPT was released in the last couple weeks, and it's worth noting this as an addendum. It has slightly changed the way we're thinking about the tool and GPT-3 generally. It is a useful way of speeding up process. We definitely don't think it's going to replace writing in any means in 2023, especially. But we are thinking about how we can incorporate it into our research process for our team to speed up and add to that creativity and flair that hopefully we all have inherently in our process. So I think that's where it kind of lands. Is AI is worth now, I think, considering it's part of the process, and we'd be, I think, potentially left behind if we don't consider that as part of the process. If you're paying attention, the plans or what we can expect is essentially an exponential growth of how this factors in the months and years to come. So I think we just have to pay attention, and that's sort of where we are now as we enter into 2023, is working this into our workflow, seeing what kind of impact it has, measure that impact. Definitely don't see any like drastic change, but it's at the point now where with that ChatGPT, I think for sure worth considering augmenting our strategy at very least. So that's where it sits, and it's definitely a trend to pay attention to in 2023.
I would love to hear your counter arguments, but that's what it is. Give us a thumbs up, a like, and subscribe to this. And stay tuned for more great videos from your robot overlords. Thanks for watching.